So, good afternoon and welcome to the AS level and A level music technology support session on advanced information for summer 2022. Um, we'll begin in a minute. Obviously, people are still arriving at the moment, and we'll give them a few minutes to arrive and then we'll begin. Okay, so good afternoon and welcome to the AS level and A level music technology update on advanced information for summer 2022. Just go through a few housekeeping rules and information at the moment. So the session is being recorded, and I'll make a recording and the slides available a couple of days after the session, usually via the Pearson Music Community page. So there's a link at the end of these slides to that page as well. So please do join up to that, as it's a good place to get some of the information and also ask questions as well. The slides for this session are available in the chat of this meeting as well, so you can download the slides there if you need them as well. Other things is that if you do experience any issues with audio or video, first thing to try is logging out of the session and then logging back in. That usually fixes most things, but hopefully we won't experience any problems like that. And then finally, there is time for questions during this session. There is going to be plenty of time at the end for you to clarify any points that you want to and ask any questions. Please do type them into the chat at that point. But if you do have any questions as we go through, you can type them into the chat, but what I'll probably do is wait for that time to go back and go through any questions at that point as well. Okay, so the agenda is to just have a quick look at the overview of the situation and how where we've got to at this point. Then we'll go through the actual and talk through the points of the advanced information for A level and AS, and then there's time to ask any questions as well, just to clarify any points that you may have. I may not be able to answer all of the things that you have at this point, or clarify absolutely everything, but I'll do my best, and hopefully that gives you all the information and to move forward and prepare your students for the summer as well. So an overview of the situation is there was an outcome from a consultation for NEA that was published on the 16th of June 2021. You should all be very familiar with the changes in requirements for the NEA components. So I don't intend to particularly talk about those today, as done lots of those over the last 6 months or so, as we found out the changes there. And that confirmed that the arrangements that were in place for summer 2021 submissions would carry forward to 2022 submissions. That meant the removal of capture for component 1, and then the reduction in time for the submissions as well across components 1 and component 2. There was also the consultation on the arrangements for summer 2022 that closed on the 1st of August 2021. The outcomes from that were published on the 30th of September, and that confirmed that exam boards would provide advanced information about the focus of the content of the exams for all GCSEs, AS levels and E levels, except for GCSE English Literature, History, Ancient History and Geography. We then published guidance document back in December, on the 9th of December, giving some detail about the presentation of the advanced information and what that will look like for each subject. And then finally, on Monday, on the 7th of February, you got the advanced information published. So a little bit of detail around advanced information and what it is and how it can be used. Again, gone through lots of this already in previous sessions, but just to recap really. Advanced information is intended to communicate in advance some of the aspects of the specification that will be assessed in the exam papers. The information will detail the focus of particular aspects of the exam and could give details on the content, context, text, topics, subtopics, themes and skills that will be assessed in the exams in 2022. Its intention is to support revision in the time before the exam. And the advanced information doesn't require any changes to the question paper's usual structure. So that does mean that the assessments in summer 2022 papers will be familiar to teachers and students. It will allow the continued use of all the teaching and learning resources that are around, including the past papers. And it will support student confidence in minimising the unexpected in terms of the layout or structure of a question paper as well. It does mean that different qualifications require different advanced information solutions to maximise the value. Although there was a common approach across specifications within each subject area and at a particular level, it does mean that there are different approaches across different subjects, and obviously not in the case of music technology, where we are the sole provider. It does mean that across boards in some subjects as well, the advanced information would look different in terms of the subject because of the differences in how exam papers are presented and how they work in terms of the assessment. And it's also that advanced information would not always be able to detail everything that's in the exam. And I think that's a case here with music technology as well. So key principles were that we had to avoid providing so much detail that answers were to questions would be able to be prepared or memorized. And we've made sure advanced information doesn't undermine the value of the qualification in supporting student progression, doesn't directly provide answers to other potentially low tariff questions as well, and it doesn't compromise the capability of exams to sufficiently differentiate between the student performance on the exams as well. So the advanced information can be used from the point of release, so you can begin using that now, and it can be used flexibly by centres to achieve its purpose of supporting revision. However, it shouldn't be used to narrow teaching and learning. Just to clarify, it can't be brought into the exams, and it will not be at a level that allows questions to be predicted or answers prepared. Presentation will take the most appropriate form to make the information clear for students and teachers as well. So use advanced information to develop revision materials. So you could use it to develop some focused mock papers. You can use the advanced information to support extended response questions. So looking through past papers and the questions that are there where you have advanced information and the detail around the topics, to use those to inform uh, extended response questions that you would like to prepare with your students. And it would also use past paper exemplars to support the advanced information topics as well. And on this slide, there's some links through to the past papers, mark schemes and examiner reports that you might find useful. And there's links through to exemplar material as well. So the advanced information for A-level music technology, just to run through the bullet points that were included in the document, it does say that students will be expected to draw on knowledge, skills and understanding from across the specification when responding to high mark questions. That's both written and practical. That is obviously dependent on the question in the paper when the exams happen. The advanced information is presented for each paper for high mark questions only. The advanced information could indicate the musical style, era, processing technique or topic from the specification, or a specific instrument processing and mixing. And the subject content not listed below could also appear across any remaining questions in either paper. So that's the lower tariff questions as well. So in terms of the detail for A-level music, it is presented for both papers. So component 3, listening and analysing, and component 4, producing and analysing. Something to make clear is that advanced information only applies to the exam components and not the NEA components. So for component 3, listening and analysing, the advanced information, the high mark items on the paper are detailed in section B, and that will cover large scale analog track, digital audio workstations and emerging technologies, and reverb. And then for component 4, producing and analysing, there's information for section A, which is topic 1.2, capture of sound, and topic 1.4, sampling. And then for section B, topic 1.9, dynamic processing, topic 1.11, EQ, and topic 1.12, effects. For AS level music technology, again, similar bullet points were included in the advanced information about expecting to draw on knowledge, skills and understanding from across the specification when responding to high mark questions. The advanced information is presented for each paper for the high mark questions only. And the advanced information could indicate music style, era, processing technique or topic from the specification, or a specific instrument processing and mixing. And then subject content not listed below could appear across any paper questions for either of the papers as well. So the detail around that, again, For component 3, listening and analysing, there's section B, which is the era of digital audio workstations and emerging technologies. And then for paper 4, for the producing and analysing, you've got topic 4.1.7, pitch and rhythm correction and manipulation. And then in section B, you have 4.2.1 acoustics and 4.2.2 monitor speakers. I know that does sound quite broad in terms of the information that is provided, but when you start to look at things in conjunction with the structure of a paper and the types of questions that these are are looking at in terms of the sections, you should start to be able to draw out some of the information to help and support your students with this in the preparation before the exams and their revision. So here are again some useful links just through to the advanced information documents for A-level and AS. So you've got access to those if you need them, but I'm sure most of you have accessed those already anyway. And really now, what I want to do for the majority of this session is really open it up to questions to allow you the chance to clarify anything that you need so that you can fully prepare and support your students as we move towards the assessments in the summer 2022. There are a couple of questions that have come in already. One is about having mark schemes for the legacy papers. So the legacy material was uploaded earlier this year, probably late last year actually. But yeah, so that's there. The mark schemes had just being prepared, and everything should be uploaded soon in terms of all of that material for the legacy specification that we have up on there to help support you. And then someone has asked for this year's listening and analysing, does this mean that question 6 will be about reverb? So although the advanced information doesn't refer to specific questions and what will be included, if you are looking at previous papers and the sample assessment materials as well, and looking alongside the information that has been provided, you can probably make assumptions about the advanced information and which questions it is referring to there. So you should look at, as I said, look at the previous questions and the advanced information in conjunction, and you can draw conclusions around that. I can see someone is typing a question. Someone's asked, why is the information only for the higher level questions when other subjects have much narrower focus on their exams? As it says, sometimes it's not possible, and it was to consider predictability as well, and how useful the information could be. Because the advanced information couldn't refer to specific questions as well, the advanced information, if it was for lower tariff, would be a huge list of topics that wouldn't be particularly relevant and useful, I would suggest there. And the advanced information was prepared in consultation with Ofqual as well, in terms of the guidance that was in place around preparing advanced information and making sure that things weren't predictable as well. So essentially, the decision that was made was that we could provide this information, and we couldn't go into further detail around the lower mark tariff questions there. Okay, there's another question come in. This year's listening and analysing, does this mean that question 5 will be comparison between an original song from large scale analog and a remix? Again, I can't confirm that, one, because I don't see the paper, so I don't know what's actually on the paper. I would suggest, again, looking at the previous exam papers and using the advanced information and drawing some conclusions around the information there that you do have. Based on your answer for my last question, could you not have given the eras for questions 1 to 4 on component 3 or instruments component 4? Not much more information would have provided a focus for students. I think some of those things were discussed around what could be provided in terms of that, and I think the eras was one consideration, but in terms of the usefulness of the advanced information for that, I don't particularly see how much that would buy a student in terms of preparing. They would be able to listen to things of a similar era, I suppose, but in terms of the actual content, in terms of the topics that would be included, they wouldn't have any particular way of being supported in that way, I suppose. But obviously, as I said, the advanced information was prepared in consultation with Ofqual as well, and the advanced information that's been provided was agreed as being what we could provide in that way. When will the legacy analysing papers and mark schemes be published? I'm afraid I don't have a date for that because I'm not involved with that process. I know that a colleague of mine is, and I believe they've got all the material now. It is just a case of getting that up online. So I would hope that it would be in the next week or so that all of that material will start to appear. Okay, again, just waiting for a couple of people to type the questions. Question regarding grade boundaries, with 2019 being the last time proper exams took place and only having those 2019 grade boundaries, I'm struggling to estimate the grade inflation deflation for current students. Are there any resources that could help? I think that's a really interesting question to ask, but also quite difficult to answer in terms of what there is to help and support you with that. Yes, we do have the 2019 grade boundaries. What I would do in terms of thinking about that, because there has been the announcement about this year being a transition year between 2019 and the grades and the distribution of grades that we saw in summer 2021, I would suggest looking at the grade distribution. So not necessarily the grade boundaries, but looking at the percentage of grades across the qualification that were there for 2019 and there for summer 2021, looking at those differences and then making some decisions based on that, and 2022 being this transition year where it will still be probably more generous than 2019 in terms of the grade distribution, but maybe not as generous as the 2021 results were in terms of the grade distribution there. So I think it's looking at those other bits of information rather than just that. Obviously, we've just got that single 2019 grade boundary to help make you help support you make those decisions in terms of the estimates there. That may not give you a total answer, but I hope that helps in some way. Okay, just got another question come in regarding the mix for component 1. I understand that candidates are expected to use all the supplied audio to create the best takes and the most realistic performance in terms of double tracking, etc. But they also expected to edit the audio where poor performance have led to discrepancies in arrangement, timing, and feel. I'm thinking of the drums in particular. In terms of that, students, the audio files that provided contain lots of similar type of problems that students would encounter in a particular, in a normal year where they would do recordings probably. So this could include things like timing problems, spill, and all sorts of things like that. So what a student would need to consider is how much that is going to affect their mark in terms of the amount of work that they would be doing as well. So they should consider that and consider the mark scheme and how much that would buy them. I can't remember the marking grid that it all would fall under off the top of my head. But there would be probably for some of this, some of the editing and corrections that they would do, possibly relatively few marks for the amount of work that they would put in it. But they need to consider that when they are preparing their mix for that and arrangement. Okay, so no male vocals for the ending, no marks for performance discrepancies. They're also supposed to edit the drums where the performance of the drum part of the supplied audio doesn't match the exact arrangement of the reference material. So as I said, they are expected to replicate the track provided. So the original recording that's provided with the audio material, but a student would need to probably consider again how closely they are matching that and absolutely getting everything totally, exactly the same from the material provided to the amount of time and what they would get there. Um, okay, read that one. For component 2, my students are struggling to fit their musical ideas within the reduced 2-minute brief, leading to a lowering of musical content. All going over 2-minute limit incur a point penalty. So yeah, in terms of the technology-based compositions, for A level, they are expected to be 2 minutes. For um, parity across all briefs, the video brief is 2 minutes, and all other briefs are expected to be 2 minutes as well. So that's the decision with that one. And then the penalties would apply as in how they are in the spec. With regards to the composition, how is the mark scheme being changed due to the composition now being only 2 minutes long? My students are struggling to match the criteria in full due to the shortened length. So in terms of the descriptors of the marking grids and the number of marking grids, they are not changing. So the use of marking grids for component 2 is exactly the same. There's no change there. Obviously, the expectation of development of material would have to change slightly because of the shortened length, and examiners would obviously consider that in terms of the material that they're looking at, because it is reducing by 1 minute there. So that will be considered when work is being looked at and marked and examined. So that's there with the marking grids. Just got another question coming in by the look of it. Okay, just waiting for the question to come in. Okay, back to component 1 by the look of it. The brief says that students should mix as close to the original as possible. Will that be assessed, and will students lose marks if the production differs but still holds up to modern standards? So the instruction in the brief is to mix and replicate the supplied original track as closely as possible, and that's how the material will be looked at and assessed. So again, just got a couple of people typing questions. Okay, just waiting for the questions to come through, and I'll answer them. Okay, sorry if it's an obvious one, but does that mean the existing assessment grids will be using the original as reference to award marks? So I mean, the original track provided will be used as a reference for examiners, and they will be looking at that in terms of awarding marks to for the mixes that are provided in that. Yes. So on that point, I do think it was unfair to ask students to mix as close as possible without marks. If you took the recording element out, then you should have kept the contemporary standards element rather than adding a new, in my opinion, harder point on matching the mix without credit. So the matching the mix is essentially included in the processing parts of the assessment, because students will be processing the parts to match the mix in that way. Let's see, again, someone typing, just waiting for that. But in the spec it states students have to mix to a contemporary standard for normal years, doesn't it? Yes, it does. Obviously, in normal years, that it would be to contemporary standard. Obviously, in terms of the adaptations that happened, in terms of removing capture, it was something that was obviously put in place because of the varying situations across different institutions and centres. Some centres do now have full access to studios and are able to carry out recordings, but there are still centres where that is a problem and they don't have the access to the recording studios. So to be fair and consistent for all candidates, that was a decision that was made in terms of the consultation from Ofqual regarding the NEA. Obviously, that decision was made some time ago now. Almost, well, over 6 months ago, probably 8 months ago, looking at it now. But it was good to have a clarity of that moving into this academic year. Point made about the acoustic guitar earlier from the beginning of Quora hasn't been answered. Do students need to edit the guitar to match the strumming pattern? I think in terms of that, again, it's a consideration for each candidate, depending on what they want to achieve in that mix and the time that they have and what they what processing and editing they would do on the parts. So that is a decision for candidates when they are producing their final mix on that. Will they be marked down? Again, it's looking at things, the mix holistically and marking that. So how much that could be marked down if that's not included, I can't say, and how that would impact on the mark, particularly. But considering the marking grids, that would make very little impact in terms of that across all the instruments and the editing and processing that a student would do on their track. So if they do edit it, will they get more marks than if they don't? I think, I mean, and someone's asked performance discrepancy revised not to be edited. as I said, it's a decision for the candidate. The instruction in the brief is to replicate the mix as close as possible, and using the material provided to do that. Um, it is then a case of candidates looking at the mark scheme and how much uh, editing and processing that would take to replicate that mix, um, and the decisions that they would make on that. Um, so the focus will be on processing balance and choosing the correct takes. So the marking grids mostly, in terms of what they are looking at, it stays the same. Yes, it's going to focus on replicating the original, um, but what the marking grids are assessing um, stay the same, really, in terms of the headings, in terms of the processing, the dynamics, um, and that's something that you know that marking grids will be assessing. It is an inherently flawed task because the final mix is dependent on quality and performance of the audio files, which in this case differ significantly from the original band's recording. Perhaps the files you provided could have been mixed by a pro mix engineer and used as the standard. Alternatively, the license could be sought from an original artist and audio files obtained from them. I think the task is something that was given in the assessment for 2021, and so the similar task was provided for 2022. The going into the getting licenses for audio, in terms of the time constraints of doing that, I wouldn't like to say how long that would have taken to negotiate and organise all of that. So I don't know if that would have even been a possibility to go down that route, in terms of the material there. But essentially, the task is to replicate the original, with the given audio provided, and students should be making their creative decisions, and editing the given audio to try and replicate that. Just waiting for a question to come in, but as we do, I'll pop onto the next slide as well, which just has my contact details and ways to contact me. So there's a link through to the contact portal on the website. This is where you can submit questions. There's my email address, which is teachingmusic@pearson.com. There's the phone number. There's a link there through to the Pearson Music community page as well, where the recording slides for this session will be posted up as well. And then there's the Twitter address as well. Okay, just waiting for a couple of questions to come in. Okay. I still think that if the capture element had been taken out, then providing these multi-tracks with a contemporary mix would have been a better solution. The extra element with matching the mix, yet there is no extra marks available for that. This was an oversight in the task. Of core consultants are music specialists. This music specialist would have been able to see that adding the part would be an extra task in itself. I don't know who made the decisions in terms of the overall changes for music technology within Ofqual. Obviously, teachers and awarding organisations gave feedback to Ofqual during the consultation period, so we provided our responses to the questions put, but I think the decision overall from Ofqual was to carry forward all adaptations that were in 2021 to 2022 as well. So there was literally no change that happened there. And I think in the original consultation, again, there were suggestions and feedback from teachers and awarding organisations fed into that with Ofqual as well. And as I said, I don't know who made the decisions in terms of those changes, but it was a process of those changes being put in place and an alternative arrangement being made in terms of that assessment. Okay, I hope that has answered all your questions as best I can. I know that may not have provided absolutely everything that you need, but I hope that you now feel that with the advanced information in place, you can start to prepare materials and support your students moving towards the exams in 2022. So I'd just like to say thank you very much for attending. I hope you found it useful, and that I wish you and your learners the best of luck in the exams in the summer. So someone's just asked, where will the slides be made available? So they're available in the chat. If you scroll right up to the top of the chat, they'll be available there. But also, if I go up to this page, this link here, the one just above the Twitter address, the support.pearson.com, goes through to the Pearson Music community pages, and I'll post the recording of the session and the slides in there probably tomorrow or the day after. They'll appear there. Okay, you've said they're not in the chat at the moment. Okay, put them there the other day, but what I can do. Okay, what I thought I was going to do was drop them in the chat, but it's not particularly letting me. Okay. No, it's not letting me drop them in the chat at the moment. So they will be available on the Pearson Music community page in the next couple of days. So I'll post them there. Yeah, so okay, so there we go. There's a link through to the community page on there. Okay, so yeah, thank you very much for attending, and I hope you have a good evening, and wish you and your learners all the best for the summer.